Hey, Preston, it's great to see you.
Steve, yeah, you as well. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, well, we are relative neighbors here. So we're both in northeastern Wisconsin, and the original plan was for you and I to visit in person and have this conversation at my home here in Door County. But unfortunately, something called COVID got in the way. And so we're doing this virtually. So once we are putting COVID behind us, we will definitely get here in person, and maybe we'll shoot a second one. So yeah, so we'll do the next best thing, which is Zoom. So appreciate you taking some time here, and welcome to Wisconsin.
Yes, I'm looking forward to coming up to Door County. I've heard a lot about it. Even when I was down in Texas, people found out that I was moving to Wisconsin, and they were sharing with me, "Let me tell you about Door." I'm like, "Okay," and I didn't know what Door was. Are you walking through a door, or? So Door County is famous all over the country, it's all the way down to Texas. So I'm looking forward to coming up.
Yeah, well, we think it's a magical place, and we'll look forward to hosting you up here as soon as the environment permits. So, well,
Yep.
great. Let's just jump into the conversation here. A lot of things that we can be chatting about. And first thing that I really want to start with is, how did you get interested in money? And how did you
Mm.
decide that ultimately I want to make money my profession?
You know, it really started with me. I didn't know financial planning was a thing, Steve. I just didn't know. I didn't know it was a profession. And that's why awareness is so important. And we'll get to that later when we're talking about the program at UWGB. But, when I was coming up, many things start when we were young, right? Young adults, young kids. And my family, we weren't poor. We lived in the suburbs back when the Houston suburbs were starting to expand, all the way out. It was a two road town. Now it's so big now after 25 some odd years. So anyway, but during that time, we were in the suburbs for the school districts. So it's good education. That was a thing or a decision. And like I said, we weren't poor by any means because we were living in that area. However, we were kind of not having any good momentum with money. So we were always reacting and recovering to money rather than getting momentum. And you felt that as a family. Uh, there was there was a washer or air conditioner, a washer and dryer that went out, an air conditioner went out. There was constant car repairs. There was all these things. And they would have been better suited as far as the situations. They would have been better, not handled, but we could have navigated through them a little more with, obviously, with more help on the outside. There's so many factors, right, Steve? There could be family help. There could be past monies to deal with that, savings and all that. So we didn't have that, and we felt it, and we talked about it as a family. Very important to talk about that. So um, that's when I didn't know at that particular time that is what I wanted to do, but I did feel it. So when I was introduced to financial planning in my undergrad years, that's when it clicked. I was like, oh, then we can address that plaque on the wall, which says, "Why is there so much month left at the end of the money?"
That's right.
So yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good launch point there with that quote that you just shared there. So as you were growing up, were there other examples of how people thought about money, about how people spent their money,
Mhm.
about hangups that people had around money? Like sometimes we hear, oh, well, money doesn't grow on trees, or do you know how many hours I had to work to make that money that you are asking me for right now? Were there other things like that that maybe shaped how you think about money? And have those beliefs, either positive or negative beliefs around money, are those still affecting you today, even though you have a PhD around money?
Around money, yes. Oh man, my dad teases me about that all the time. He's like, "Oh, are we gonna call you doctor or not?" And I was like, "No,
Dr.
son."
Money. Dr.
Right,
Money.
Dr. Money. I was like, "No, I guess son would still work." But yes, I do still carry some of those things from childhood over to adulthood and even into my practice. For instance, uh, money priority. All right, the order of operations is kind of like doing your algebra, please excuse my dear Sally type of thing. What do we do first? in the order operations thing. So my first experience with money at my first job at 16, I worked at a pharmacy, and I brought my check home, and Dad was like, "Okay, good job." And I was like, "Okay, well, now I'm going to the mall, and I'm gonna get that name brand shirt and jeans that I've always wanted." All right. And he was like, "Okay, you could do that. However, let's talk." And I was like, "Okay, first of all, who's this FICA dude, Dad? I don't." He was like, yes, the tax person. That I'd share with many people, especially my students, two T's that are undefeated: tax and time. They're undefeated. They're always going to be there. So he said, "Yes, here's the FICA." So he told me about that, what comes out. So you got to pay tax first. And then he said, "Well, son, I'm not going to buy any more of your toiletries for your bathroom." I was 16. He says, "Not that I can't." He said, "But this is what it is. You have to understand that there's, needs that need to be met, your priorities that need to be met before you go on to, go to the mall." And he said, "So you're going to buy your toilet paper, your toothbrush, your toothpaste, and whatnot. And you're not walking around with any stink breath either. So that's not an option." But he was teaching me order operation, and that goes into what we do today, right? We're talking about meeting the needs first, and then tackling your goals, and what order do you handle them. And as we know, it's just like the budget is or spending plan, as we call it now, is the lifeblood of everything else that we get into before we get into all the more complex things. So yeah, that was a lesson right there. And I'll share another one with you. Is I had my first experience with a 401k at home as well. So we had an old school general ledger. All right, and it was a book. It had all the lines and all that type of stuff. Remember those? And we used to get paid somewhat of allowance sometimes when my dad or my mom and dad weren't talking about, "We're allowing you to sleep in the house. We're allowing you to," kids now, they think that, allowance is just, they're entitled to that, and back when I was coming up, we were entitled to, be living. but when we did get our allowance and something like that, see, we wrote it down in the general ledger, and my parents said, "Okay, we'll match what you place in the book." And it was old school cash. So we got to see what savings was like, and that was my first introduction to a matching plan. So those are two things, and that after that, kind of like, and those two intertwine, because after Pop said tax and your priorities, then pay yourself, and that was that savings. So many people want to jump into all the complex things like deferred comp and stock options and this, that, and the other, but that foundation. These are the foundational tools that must be taken care of before we jump into all the complex stuff. So yes, I still carry those to this day. Pay yourself.
Pay yourself first, right?
Yes.
So then, as you're meeting with clients today, what are you finding are the biggest issues or challenges that they're typically dealing with? And I'm thinking more from the I don't want to say emotional side, but maybe I do. But just from like their hangups around money, what are the biases that you're finding that they have that you're working with them to overcome so that they've got a better relationship with money?
Yes. Yes. Emotions and psychology is where it's at. I mean, I know, following you and your partners, having that life, drive, the money, my practice, the monikers, let your life lead your money, not your money lead your life. And when I was talking about, reacting and recovering, then yes, the money is leading how I feel, because we're reacting and recovering with no plan, you see. And but with life, you could have the money work for you, and in that order, you get to at least try to manage the emotion instead of the emotions manage you a little bit. I know what that felt like when you asked me. It was a great way to start off, going back to the childhood. Even now, even as an adult, I keep an envelope. I wrote it out, a journal to myself of my worst times of emotion, of how I felt emotionally and financially. And I wanted to be able to look back on that and tell myself how that felt, because my money and my emotion, or where I was in life, my lack of aspiration, was at a disconnect. So yes, emotion is everything. So that was a great word. So I find clients struggle with, maybe their experiences with, in their childhood or early adulthood, and bringing them forward. Fear of the financial system, the misunderstanding of risk and where that came from. I had one pre-retiree client that loved CDs. And I'm like, oh, you talking about the musical CDs? No, she was like, no, the bank. And she was talking, this person was talking about, bank CDs.
Certificates of depreciation, as we
Yeah.
like to call them.
But you know what? There wasn't that long ago. I used to work in a bank, Steve, and I started out as a bank teller in 1998, I believe it was. And look, they were paying 5 or 6%.
Yeah, it was a good deal.
that was an excellent deal, risk free. How many people wouldn't take that all day right now, right? That said, that's okay for a pocket of money, but now what we're talking about you said the depreciation. That's not going to be enough. So, but those ideals of, kind of like the mattress feel, put it in a mattress or put it in a jar, or maybe at the bank. I mean, the bank was a nice investment back in the day. It's like, hey, open up that safe deposit box and get that CD or whatnot. And that's generational a little bit, but still, just lack of understanding of what proper risk capability, and capacity, those two different things. Yes, you may not want to take certain, risk in order to, help you increase the probability of you accomplishing your goals. But we need to work on that capacity part. You have more capacity than you think. Your capability, we can talk about that, but you do have the capacity to take a little bit more. So yeah, that.
Now, you talk about taking your clients on this money journey and helping them explore how they're thinking about money, some of the emotions that they've attached around money. But then you also mentioned that you've written yourself some letters and you've made some notes in there. And it sounds like maybe you go back and review those on a periodic basis. And then there's also this idea that we can only take people or guide people on a journey if we've been on the journey ourselves. And so I'd love if there's anything that you would be open to sharing, whether it's in one of your letters or any past experience that you've had that was more of an aha moment for you, a realization for you that really maybe helped you jump to a higher level in terms of your understanding or relationship with money that's now carried over to how you're helping guide people along their money journey.
Yes, I like sharing too, because it helps connect with the person that we're trying to help. Obviously we don't want to overshare sometimes, but if they hear, some people want to just, most folks just want to be understood, heard and understood. And for me, if I'm working with someone in whatever, capacity it is, when I hear a good story, and I'm connecting with that person, I'm like, they're going to get my business, So thanks for asking. Yeah. My aha moment was during, and I do have this moment I've written about before, which is, admitting where you are, or what the issue is, and then acknowledging those feelings and processing them, and then taking action on the first two steps. You want to go ahead and go, but you have to have those first two steps in order to get to the third. And third is so important, right? The implementation stage is it's probably the hardest one, but you do have to take action in order to go forward. And with that, and particularly at that middle A, which is acknowledgement, you're processing that, but you also have to forgive oneself as well. And we're talking about money here too. Listen, when my life wasn't aligned, or, my aspirations weren't and goals weren't defined, and I was, I had a period of, I call it kind of darkness, so to speak, finding myself, trying to reconnect with Preston the inner Preston. I was just willy-nilly spending money on self-medication and all this, and frivolous spending, just everything, just try to fill that gap and that void. Then it came to a point to where, but I had to admit that I had an issue and I was at a disconnect. I was at a loss. Until I did that, I couldn't even get to the action step because I didn't admit.
Mm-hmm.
It's out of order.
You got to acknowledge it.
Yeah, right. And then acknowledge the feelings I had, which is guilt, shame, kind of like the Brene Brown, vulnerability type of thing. Oh, I have books right there of Brene on there. And so I had to work those feelings out, because that guilt and that shame, and it did stick with me for a lot of years. I couldn't get to the action step once again, because I didn't process. I didn't seek for help. I didn't trust individuals to help me. And also, I didn't forgive myself. I did not forgive myself. And until I was able to forgive that and put that down and work my way through, then I could take action. So yes, I remember very clearly, it's in the envelope, and this is not a day thing. This took a couple of years to work through that. And by some grace from many other things, spirit, family, supporters, and even myself, because listen, I'm rich in foundation. Oh man, my grandparents, my parents, my sister, good supportive friends and all that. So I'm rich in foundation. And when there was a disconnect on that, then I knew that I could reconnect with that. And then what's in that envelope that you asked about is writing down, I did a self-audit, not only emotionally, but monetarily too. What did that look like? What I could put a number on how I felt, because there was so much money going out of the, wherever. It felt terrible. It really did. And so, but I had to move on from that and go to the process of which I mentioned. So yes, that's kind of a long story there, but that's a year, that's collapsed. That couple of minutes there is maybe 5 or 6, maybe even 7 years of that. And what we do, if I could help a client chop off 3, 4, or 5 of those years, because we're all going to go through it, because we can't listen. Nobody can save anyone or anything like that, right? But it's like, okay, maybe somebody could have helped me a little sooner if I trust a little bit. Instead of 7 years, could have been 2. And maybe I have a bigger Roth or a bigger or bigger savings than I do now. But you know what? That's part of the testimony and the journey, and it makes now and future and the impact we make on others so much more. Wow, I don't know. I don't know what the word is. It just feels so much better that you've helped somebody avoid the length of a lost period. So.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate you sharing all of that. And I think there's so many rich threads there that you talked about that we could chat even further about. Some of the things you talked about were just acknowledging and recognizing that, hey, there's an issue here that I've got to deal with. Mm-hmm. Second, you talked about how you wrote these things down, basically the idea of journaling and getting those words on paper. I know I do that as well. It's not something I do every day, but there are times I'll wake up in the middle of the night and whatever's bothering me, and I pull out my black spiral ring notebook and I just sit there at 3:00 in the morning and I'm just furiously writing things down, and no rhyme or reason, just like all these thoughts are swirling in my head and trying to get them down on paper. And sometimes I think that helps just to get that out.
Yes.
And then you also talked about the importance of having the foundation, about having other people in your life, guides. And I think that's one of the great things that people like you can do as a financial advisor who's gone through a journey, that you've got these experiences, you've been through to some extent what some of your clients have been through and what they're dealing with. And so you can speak from experience in terms of that. So I'd love to explore a little bit about when you're meeting with a new client, how do you enter into the conversation with them? Do you jump into the kinds of things we're talking about, or is it just more, we're talking more about the money and where you at financially? What are you trying to accomplish? I'd love to hear a little bit about, I'm a new potential client,
Mm-hmm.
Preston.
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through what's going to happen in the first meeting or two.
Yeah, and I'd like to add too that those ah moments necessarily don't always have to be doom and gloom either.
Yeah.
They could be, because on the tail end of that story, I had several ah moments, but another one was positive. I was like, okay, when I separated from my last firm, mutually, I was like, what do I want to do next? And that was an ah moment too. So it was more of just dreaming up. I knew I could move lateral, but I just want to just make that. So many people, say that you have to have a pain point in order to spur a process or action, and that's not necessarily true. Sometimes it's just I want to dream up. Okay, I just want to make that point. But yes, as far as the client or prospective client, one of the questions I like asking is, tell me about a money situation that you've had the last 6 months. Share that with me. How did that make you feel? And what would you have done differently? And that kind of pause there, I did that on purpose, because then because at that point, because the way you pace the question, I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but the way you pace the question, some people don't like 3-pronged questions, but if you pace it right, it comes out pretty cool. But yeah, and then just wait for them to process that, and then let them speak. And really, that one central event, I found that once they gather what you're saying, they may come up with a follow-up. They're like, okay, well, what do you mean? And I said, okay, we're in the middle of employee enrollments right now. Are you going through that right now? Can you remember a hospital moment or a bill, or maybe something happened in the household that you were on? Maybe it's a trip you wanted to take and you didn't, or maybe it's a house that you aspire to buy, or maybe a career move. But it has a root in money. Share with me, what that felt like, what that was. What did you feel? Did you feel that you were prepared? Did you feel that was an aspiration in the first place? That you think that you could or couldn't do? And tell me, what would you have done differently, or what would like to see better? So you may have to follow up. But again, pause, and then they'll have their ah. They'll be like, so there was this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now that you ask.
Yeah. Right. And it was like, it'll start off a couple of different ways, like I got chills right now. I mean, little chills, because they'll say, there was this job, I wanted, but it was in, Wisconsin, or it was in LA or whatever. And I think I wanted to try to do that, but I didn't, because, then then the story comes out.
Yeah.
So that's one of my go-tos right there, because Steve, once they start on that, then it's bringing out that Black Sparrow notebook that you talked about. It's all day from there. That session, of course, you want to stay on target and get the goals and offer the services and, set the engagement and all that. But that right there, something like that, you get to say, well, I know I did. It's like, okay, that was all good. Thank you for sharing that. That's going to set the tone for what we're going to do over the next 3, 6, and 9 months. And we'll come back to that. That's all good things. And this is what we're going to help you with. Those aspirations, those feelings, those pivot points that you would like to do, and you and your household would like to do better. This is why we're here.
Yeah. A couple of things that I love about what you just said there is, first, I love the question. And one of the things I really like about asking, tell me about a money situation here in the past 6 months, is you're relating it to recent. So you're not necessarily going way back to their childhood. It's like immediate. And so that they may bring up the issue that they're coming to you to have you try and help them solve. So I like how it's the past 6 months. I think that was great. And then you talked about the power of the pause. So you ask the question and then you just like be quiet. And I know sometimes we feel like the silence can just kill us. And we're just like, oh, I've got to fill that silence. Maybe they don't like my question, so maybe I just need to say something and fill that silence. But I think that's a real skill when you can ask a question and you can just sit back and be silent with it, let them think. Oftentimes you can see the wheels are turning, and there's so much power in that silence. And yet we so want to fill it with continuing to talk.
You know, that's either it's innate or learned, or both. For me, it was innate as far as listening. I got that from my mother. That said, I had to get trained up in that area, not to jump in. I did that in my earlier career. Oh man, because I just wanted to say, oh, I have something for that, right? But it was so quick. And yes, I was good at that in other areas. I was always told I had an old soul, so I was good at listening. But I've gotten that from my mother. But professionally, it's kind of like somebody that starts their first sports career in the pro, and they have the talent, but they don't know what's going on in the game. You got to get coached up a little bit on that. The speed of the game, whether it be baseball, whatever, speed of the game. And until I allowed myself to be coached on that, Steve, I wasn't comfortable with the pause. I didn't know how powerful it was, like you mentioned, the power of the pause, and I didn't know how to carry that out. And a lot of that, for at least for me, I kind of get that from my grandfather, which is, listening and having some sort of self-esteem, self-worth. Because so many advisors ask, they're like, okay, what is it about that pause that I don't like, or whatnot? What is it about? It is because you have to have an inner balance. And when I mentioned my grandfather, I would ask him a couple of things sometimes, and he would say, son, just keep living. But it's so true, because now, as a more mature, advanced, approaching kind of midlife, still young, 42 and whatnot, I had enough life under my belt to where I'm not uncomfortable with that. I'm centered as a person in order to not jump in, not want to have the mirror reflected on me, say something about me, feel uncomfortable and break the pause, like, oh, did I say something wrong? That takes a level of assuredness, not arrogance or anything like that. You have to have an inner peace to understand, okay, let that person, and trust, let that person process that. And don't worry about how that makes you feel. First of all, the professional should be centered already, because that's what the prospect or the client is coming to you for. They're not coming to worry and all this type of stuff, So that's the power of the pause and the comfort level of the advisor to within themselves to allow for that to happen. If that can occur, it's powerful, like you said.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the real values that a financial advisor delivers, is this ability to have this type of human one-to-one conversation with someone, to just sit with them, to, again, to sit in that quietness for a moment while they're thinking, and for the advisor to have the, I'm going to say, humility as well, to not feel like, oh, I'm the expert, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to tell you what to do, I'm going to fix you. That's not the role here. So I think there's some level of humility that needs to happen. And so I think that's a real value that's never going to be tossed away or made obsolete through technology. And and it's also the type of, I'm going to say, skill set that we'll never reach a level of mastery at that. And I think of mastery as like an asymptote, where we just continue to try and strive toward this direction of getting better and better and a greater level of self-awareness, but we're never going to arrive. There's always more. There's always a deeper level that we can reach. And to me, that's part of the wonderful journey of life, is knowing that I can keep getting better at whatever it is that I'm trying to do, and go to a different level. So So appreciate you sharing that. Now, one of the things that you have on your website is you talk about this idea of life money balance, and I
Mhm.
think you've touched on this a little bit. So what does that mean to you, and how do you have that kind of conversation with your clients?
Yes. So, in fact, first of all, I didn't even know that life center planner was a thing. Okay, so or life center planning was a thing. Uh, in of itself, the whole paradigm of it. Just like I didn't know what financial planning was. I had to be introduced to it by a mentor in undergrad years ago. But we already talked, which was I knew what these money things were through experience as it coming up, but I had to be aware of what the profession it was and how to go about that. So I say that to say this about the life center planning. These things came innate for me, Steve. So when I wrote the website, I took 18 months to um, develop my philosophy, what I wanted to say to my clients, share how I wanted to impact them, how I wanted them to see themselves in the approach of their own money journey. I wanted them to come and say, this is me. I could connect with this. I understand. This is me. And that's the connection that I wanted. I didn't want to be preaching to my clients. I wanted them to find themselves in that, and I also wanted to connect with them through a life story, um, with the life aspirations. That story that we talked about, that's important. Some people say, okay, you get a little long-winded there. No, that's the it. That is the it, because that will inspire folks to engage, which is, some people say the implementation is the hardest part, but I think the engagement is equally as hard, simply wanting to engage. And so this is where all of that, the writing of the envelope, the time to figure out the philosophy, all that goes into what you asked, which is life money balance. And it is that. That's where the name Concurrent came from, is having your life and your money run concurrently in partnership. If they begin to cross, they go immediately in different directions. I wanted parallel partnership, you see. That's where the name came from. Life money balance, that's where that comes from, which is not necessarily kind of like work life balance. It's balancing uh, where I want my life to go and how I want my money resources to fuel that. Okay, how do I work that out? I need to balance that out. That's what life money balance is.
And do you help your clients find that balance through dialogue, or do you have exercises that you walk them through, whether they're like paper-based exercises or digital exercises? How do you help them find what life money balance means for them?
Yes, dialogue, and that's good too, to have a process in there. And then uh, nowadays we're having a discussion. Excuse me, as far as the profession is concerned, is okay. Uh, isn't that an additive? When you're talking about counseling, when you're talking about financial therapy, that's a whole separate thing. But you can integrate some tools in there. Basically, we're talking about behaviors and money psychology. It's like, okay, I don't want to get too, emotional with my clients. You hear that, that pushback a lot. Uh, but I respond with the process. The financial planning process was built for that already. We're just practicing it how it's supposed to be practiced now. When you're that second part, in the stages, when you're learning about your client, this is where you could do it. And I've given webinars on this a couple of times, whereas I do assess. So first of all, that dialogue, that one question that we talked about, so that kicks it off, and that it's sharing what the culture of the firm and what benefit we can bring to you. We call that the value proposition. What's your value proposition? But you have to be confident and assured enough to deliver that effectively and clearly, so the client can connect with it. I say, so I have these 3 C's, which is connect, communicate, and convince. And those are those nudges. That's the process in of itself. Yes, in that second stage, I give a short assessment. You can't assess your clients to death, but you can do an anxiety scale, a fear scale, right? And I'm also going to be intertwining the KMSI, money scripts. So that's short. That's 15 short questions, takes you 2 minutes. Okay. And then also, so that's the assessment part. But the other part is being able to extract. That dialogue is so important. It's why sometimes it's so hard to measure or share or teach or show someone how to communicate and keep that dialogue going to where it's beneficial to the client all the way through. Because sometimes it's simply not an objective rubric. It is dialogue. It is what they shared with you, but you have to get that out of them first. So they're continuously engaged and connected in the way that they came up with themselves. If they came up with it and shared it with you, and you're reminded, I'd say this too, the reminding tool, which is always coming back to, you shared with me XYZ. So so assessment, dialogue, and also having those reminders throughout the process. If the goals or the actions or the inaction is not there, then it's okay. Mr. and Mrs. Client, I remember our last conversation, or particularly our first one. Our goals were, and you shared with me this, and you said it would make you feel better if you accomplished this. So share with me what this last spree was about, and tell me, do you think that aligns with this? How did that make you feel? How does that make you feel now? Now we're back to the feeling again. And now they'll get themselves now. Just like when I was, and I don't want to call my clients a prospect childbirth or anything like that, but you know what? My parents used that on me back in the day. They'd ask me, "Well, tell me what you thought about what you did." And then before they didn't have to say anything, they'd be like, yeah, I got it. So that was kind of long there, but it was a little. There was just those are the things that keep people engaged, I believe.
Excellent. Well, let's go back to where we started here, our conversation today, where we mentioned that you recently moved to Green Bay and you're starting up a PhD program. So let's geek out here for a minute. Tell me about your PhD. Tell me about the thesis. What was your thesis on?
Yes. So we get to, the geek out. So now I'm pumped up again.
Okay.
So, but you know what? Connecting with clients and doing that too. That's why I'm a pracademic. And I know we talk about that. I didn't even know that was a word until recently.
I love the word. I heard you say that on another podcast. I'm like, I like that, pracademic.
Yes. Somebody gave that to me. I didn't originate that. But I get chills on both sides, and I appreciate the opportunities and the wherewithal in order to enjoy both sides of the coin. Actually, they help one another. To be perfectly honest, So my my dissertation was about, and I'm about to submit these for publication, was on uncertainty risks and personality traits, the association between the two. So uncertainty risks, and the three of them were living too long, this is longevity risk, living too sick, which was long-term care, and dying too early, and that would be life insurance. Or actually, the uncertainty risk is dying to where you're losing human capital, that living too sick, and that's the uncertainty there is not having enough finances and the type of care, and living too long, which is the uncertainty of not being able to maintain your lifestyle. So many people, when I've presented those or shared that topic, they're like, "Oh, you're trying to sell product." I said, no, it's what is your makeup, your personality makeup, particularly the big five personality traits. We've heard of the Myers-Briggs. That's more of, it's used in an employment sector and all that. So that it's a good assessment. But the big five, the 5-factor model is the ocean traits, which is openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And what those are domains. And we're all not in a singular domain. It's a higher levels of association. What is that dominant trait? So higher levels. So you still have others that make up yourself. And in some of those, during periods of times of life or situations, one may become dominant for that short term to deal with that situation. Like for dog, listen, I run like an 8-9 second 40 time. All right, but the dog's coming to catch me. I'm Carl Lewis. So
or Tyrone Ross.
Or yeah, Tyrone Ross. Yes. Shouts out to Tyrone. Yes, yeah. See, I can maybe beat Tyrone in a baton handoff or something like that if a dog is chasing me.
That's right. All right? Or a bear.
or a bear, right? So yeah, a personality trait may sneak up during those times, but then on average, your higher level of that one personality trait dominates over time. So my question to that is those 3 C's, which is connecting, communicating, and convincing, which is nudge. How do I better communicate or connect with my client and communicate with them so they'll hear, what we have to offer as far as suggestions for them to consider. If they simply it's more like, remember your old school and know your client, your KYC. If I know a little bit more about my client, how they hear things, how they process things and whatnot, then I can better communicate with them, connect and communicate with them, and then nudge them in the area, not to what they don't need, but what they already define that they want. If they're considered about living too long, if they tell me, I don't know if I can maintain my lifestyle and, for 30 years of retirement, that's a concern from them. I didn't sell them a product. They told me that. My family has history of illness, toward the end of life, whether it be Alzheimer's, this, that, and they shared that with me, But how do we go about addressing that? And so that kind of what spurred my research in that, the associations of what personalities associate with certain uncertainty risk. Those 3 were easy to measure given the data. And certain personalities associate with some and then don't. For instance, conscientiousness is one that associates with pretty much all 3 consistently, because conscientiousness takes a little bit of self-awareness, connecting with yourself, those type of traits, because you have the 5 traits, and then you have these facets within them, that make that make up that one domain. Let's see. There was another one. Okay, extroversion, for example. These folks tend to take a little bit more risk in their daily lives. Maybe gambling, or they earn a lot, yet or have kind of risky habits, so to speak. Or they are attracted to levels of risk. It could be skiing, it could be gambling, it could just be, financial, any type of risk. They're attracted to that. So they may not associate well or hear a conversation about mitigating risk if they're risk takers. That's pretty cool information to know a little bit. Just like with, the Dr. Brad Klontz and many others who have used this, that KMSI model that I mentioned, which is the money scripts, those 4 domains. Am I vigilant? Am I a worshiper of money? What's my status and all that? So if you know a little bit, and that's what that assessment is about earlier, what we talked about, which is, okay, if you're having some sort of fear, having some sort of anxiety, maybe a personality or something, just learn. Like I said, you can't assess your clients to death, but the more you know about them, maybe you can communicate with them a little better. That's like somebody telling you, I used to be a wholesaler and back in the day, or just doing business, period. And you call somebody at 8 a.m, And they're like, didn't I tell you that, a good window for me was from 12 to 3? Well, they're not going to hear anything you have to say after that because you simply called them at the wrong time because of how their makeup is. So anyway, that was the nature of the dissertation.
Yeah.
So
Well, great. Yeah. And it just another example of how there's so much more we can learn as a professional on how we can do a better job. So just like the research you did with your dissertation, there's so many levels of that you can use in terms of having the dialogue with your clients. So to me, it's just really continues to highlight the importance of we all have to be lifelong learners.
yes,
We
yes,
can never get to the point where we think we know it all, because that's
true.
the beginning of our downfall if we ever
Oh,
think we're at
I'm
that
learning
point.
so I'm learning so much for. I love the life center planning crowd. I'm probably stick my own flag in there as well because it came innate for me. So when I knew it was a thing, well, my chair of my dissertation was Dr. Sarah Acevedo. You know, she's a good friend of mine as well, and I learned over the last 4 years about your partner, Mitch Anthony, George Kinder. I've been friends with Rick Kaler. So because of my time at the Financial Therapy Association, I've been on that board for several years. The K-State crowd, friends of, oh, and then I really just got into that when I met Sarah 4 years ago when I started at Texas Tech. She's just been a phenomenal a mentor. She goes, hey, she's so kind the way she suggests things, like I came up with the idea. She was like, have you considered, this, that, and the other? And I was like, no. And I was like, oh, wow, And so I'm enjoying this. And the reason why I say all that to say this is that I have a couple of research projects coming up, but one of them I'm trying to get some momentum on, which is I'd like to see, and it's an experiment, so it's going to be primary data, which would kind of like it's intervention based, which is what if I haven't kind of figured out how to really deliver this, but I started with a word jumble and have a word jumble with just finance only type of words like return on investment or some portfolio based, of S&P 500 or, life insurance, those type of things, these technical terms, and then mix those up. So that's one look at it. And then the other jumble has those technical terms surrounded with these life center planning words like aspiration, goals, accomplishment, whatever, and just throw these life words in with those words and see somehow or another, and then have them answer a scale of their order of operations of their financial planning goals. Then it makes them engage. So after you saw these two different jumbles, one just purely technical and then the other one technical mixed in with these life aspiration and the goals, all right, did that help you engage with your financial plan more so one compared to the other?
Mm-hmm.
So that's obviously they would take a engagement test before. Are you going to engage with your financial plan within the next 6 or 12 months? More likely, somewhat likely, all that. Then you do the intervention, and then retest them and see, and then run a regression on that and see what we come up with. And I'm curious to see if that was a thing or if I can carry that out. But that's kind of an introductory to aligning some research, with what we do.
Yeah. It almost sounds like it's seeing if we can use positive psychology as a way to further engage people in the financial planning process. So when you talk about aspiration and those types of forward-looking things that have positive emotions attached to them, it's almost as if we can help people paint this compelling, positive vision of their future. And is that going to help them get more engaged with what they need to do in terms of getting their financial house in order to live that into that positive future that they're describing there?
Yes. There's something on the the lines of that, and that really, and I know some empirical research, in this area, particularly with PERMA, positive thinking, and but I do want to interject, and I forgot what theory I'm going to use. I just started outlining this last month, And hopefully, I think Sarah's going to jump in with me as well. So we'll just iron all this out. But the whole goal is to extend the research and then also the application of the research. We have all this, like your life's work with Life Center Planning and Mitch and all those people that we already named, right? The buoys out there and the California and Sandra Davis, my pal, so now it's like, okay, can we put some more empirical based, knowledge in there? And so we have all this great knowledge of what it is, and it's been proven to work. Now I'd like to just see if I could extend some empirical based knowledge on that. So it should be fun.
Yeah. And are your students at Green Bay, are they going to be the guinea pigs on some of this research?
I read somewhere that, with Amazon and all the technology now, you can get some pretty good data, relatively inexpensive now. But I read somewhere that a lot of the research, primary data research, because of the availability of students on college campuses, when you try to get primary data, I think they did this report in the U.S. and across the world, as far as academic studies, it's like 70%, and I think it's even higher, of primary data coming is on young people at universities.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where the professors are.
yeah, that's where the professors are, and you have a ready population in order to answer questionnaires and stuff like that. But what it does is it tilts the cycle of the life cycle, where you are in life. It tilts the outcome of the information.
Right. Yeah. It's like we're doing all these experiments and we're basing all these great ideas and principles on hormonal 20-somethings.
Right. And it's 10-year blocks. I know for a fact 21 and 31 was different for me, and 31 now 41 going on 42 different. Yeah. So it'd be nice to have a mix, and so I'd like to shy away from using university students for that and get a better mix out there. But speaking of the program, thanks for asking. This is another passion point, Steve. I want to do the business, which I do, the practice, which I am doing, the research, the academic part of it, and now making impact on others, for particularly young folks. And somebody helped me, when I said I didn't know financial planning was a thing, right? With a mentor showed me the awareness, the taking the additional time to. I graduated from undergrad Prairie View A&M, which is a historically Black college, and then my mentor there introduced me to the folks at Texas Tech. And I've been in and around that program for 20 years now. I had a master's there from 2006, and then I went back for a PhD because I didn't get enough, But that's what I want to pay it forward. And there's been people in between during my career, Steve, that Miss Dina Katz and Harold Levinsky and Lizetta Rainey Braxton, all these people. I know so many people across the country. I've learned from them. I want that feeling for young people getting into this profession and learning how to do it the right way, so to speak, and that's what gives me passion to be at somewhere like University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. They want to build a program in Northeast Wisconsin. We have one down at University of Wisconsin-Madison, but Wisconsin's a large state, and there's no really presence of that in Northeast Wisconsin. The community wants it badly, right? The firms, the financial planning, financial advisory firms, yes, they want that financial planning culture at a university program. The students have expressed explicitly, not just, I want to be in finance. They're like, no, I've heard of this thing, financial planner, financial advice. This is what I want to do. But there hasn't been a mechanism in order to capture that. So that's what we're doing with the program. And UWGB is a great facilitator of that, because they've said explicitly, Preston, we brought you in here to do this, and which is build a program to bring together, the community of Northeast Wisconsin, the students, the program, and the firms, and bring that all together. And that's what the program is all about. It's in its infancy right now, but we'll have a financial planning minor by the spring or summer. I just turned in that paperwork, by the way, so I know exactly.
All right.
I know for sure that's going to happen.
It's happening.
And we'll be CFP board registered approved by the spring also.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, this is great because having people like you out there that are teaching the next generation of financial planners, I think is awesome, with your experience and your passion and understanding of the profession. I think is just great. And it's here in Northeastern Wisconsin. So
yes.
we're in a bit of an island up here.
Yeah,
so
I'm learning
out of the mainstream, so this is really cool to have you up here. That's great. All right. I just want to wrap up here with you're working on a book. I think it's called Statements. So
yes.
tell me about this book. What is that?
Oh, wow. So thanks. I did so much writing for research and everything. It kind of got side pocketed a little bit, but I'm hoping it comes out by the fall of next year. My hope. But the book is centered around what we've been talking about. It's here. I very explicitly, I have a statement in my envelope, my journals that I shared with you. I have about 3 months. I analyzed a quarter during that time that I said that my life and my money were going like this. They were at a disconnect. Well, I have statements, bank statements in there along with the journal. And you'll probably relate to this, is when you're going through the data gathering stage or data gathering stage, and you ask for all those documents, all right, you'll get a lot of them. You'll get life insurance policy. You'll get maybe even the may or may not get the credit card report. You may get you'll get a lot the investment account. You get the 401k. You may have to ask, can you send me a number, but you'll get that whole big thing, that package. You'll get from the bank statement, and maybe even the credit card statement now, the way people are using the credit card in order for their daily lives. What you'll get is the summary statement. You'll get that first page, that one that has the address, the account, and then it says, okay, what you have and what you spent, and then the balance.
But not what you spent it on.
That's right. That's right. You will not get that, not right off the bat.
Yeah.
You won't get that itemized statement. And because it's personal.
And that's where their values lie. There's that old saying, if, we can ask people, well, what are your values? What's important to you? And they may say, well, it's this, that, and the other thing. But then it's like, okay, show me your bank statement. Show me your credit card statement. And in years gone by, you'd say, show me your checkbook register.
Yep.
And then I'll know what your values are.
Yes, exactly. And when you get that, then you're getting somewhere. Again, it goes right back to having that the foundation taken care of before you get out to the complex. People want to trade options. They were like, I want to open up a Robinhood account. I want to do this. I want to trade this. I want to buy some Bitcoin, which is good, But I said, well, let's get that bank statement, right? Let's start from where we need to start. And so that's where the idea came from. It's about that. Then the statement has two meanings, which is the bank statement, the itemized bank statement. And then what the statement it makes about your, like you said, which is that value system. What is it saying? So it does the word statement. I'm thinking about just putting statement with a period, and statement be the word be kind of like designed in money, but just have statement period, and maybe life money balance at the bottom on a white backdrop, and say what we're going to talk about. But that's the kind of the nature of the book. And also to the third part of the book is having other people contribute statements. What that question that you asked me, what points in your life, either at a high or a low point, what was that aha moment to you? What statement did that make about your value system and where you went forward? So I'm not necessarily a fan of books that, somebody says they wrote a book and it had a whole bunch of people contributed to it, so I do want that third leg in there. I want to hear other people's stories and what that meant to, and particularly professionals, what that meant. And and maybe even some friends in there. So that's what's going to make the book unique. It's a statement about statements.
Excellent.
So,
well, you're on the record now. So the millions of people that listen to this podcast heard that you're going to put this book out in the fall of 2021. So we got a
yes,
little pressure on you now. So we'll look forward
yes.
to getting that out. And yeah, assuming that gets out, would love to have you come back on the show and we can talk about the book. So that would be a lot of fun too.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll put some research in there as well. Some either research that's been found to come to like behavioral and all that. So it'll be built up. It's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. So
Great.
thank you for that.
Great. Well, Preston, anything else that you want to add here? And would love for you to share ways that people can connect with you if you want folks want to learn more about what you're doing.
Yes. You can follow me on Facebook. So Dr. Preston Cherry on there. Concurrent Financial Planning is one on Facebook, but it's also the website, which is Concurrent FP as in financial planning.com. I'm also on Twitter at Dr. Preston Cherry. So
awesome.
Yes.
Well, great. Well, Preston, this has been fantastic. I appreciate you taking some time. Welcome again to Northeastern Wisconsin, and I wish you all the best as you're building up the program there at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the invite. This has been fun. Thank you so much.